In the final chapter of Making Meaning, David Baldwell argues that some of the most basic interpretations in film analysis can be redundant, or even contradictory. He writes, "If two characters are in the same shot, I can say that they are united by being in the same shot, or separated by the space in between them. If they are in different shots, I can say that the cut separates them, a cut to break, or links them, a cut to join." I love this quote, not only because it explores the danger of overinterpretation, but because it reveals something more fundamental. There is no one-to-one relationship between film technique and a fixed meaning. Cut to meaning. I believe a possible answer to this quote can be found by going back to the 1920s, across the globe to Soviet Russia, the birthplace of montage. As Tarantino puts it,
crazy Russians started fucking around with images, all right, and juxtaposing them and creating different emotional effects.
In the wake of the Russian Revolution, Vladimir Lenin recognized film as a powerful tool for shaping public consciousness. Mobile cinemas brought films to the rural populations, and filmmakers began experimenting with how editing could influence emotion and thought. This led to some of the greatest editing discoveries in history, pioneered by Lev Kuleshov and Sergei Eisenstein, who each deserve their own videos. But today, I would just like to focus on the third and final key figure in Soviet montage theory, Vsevolod Padovkin, whose book, Film Technique and Film Acting, reveals the possible answer to Baldwell's quote through his 5 key methods of editing. Montage in practice. Padovkin's 5 editing techniques. 1. Contrast. Contrast creates meaning by juxtaposing opposing images. Perhaps one of the most famous cuts of all time uses contrast, the bone to satellite transition in 2001: A Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick. Kubrick contrasts when early man first began using tools to when they have already begun venturing across space. This cut compresses thousands of years of human evolution into a single moment, demonstrating how editing can create meaning beyond what is exactly shown. Another example of this appears in The Godfather by Francis Ford Coppola. The baptism scene cross-cuts between a sacred ritual and brutal assassinations set up by Michael, played by Al Pacino.
I do renounce him.
And all his works?
The audience is forced to compare innocence and violence simultaneously, producing a moral tension.
I do renounce them.
But this doesn't have to be used for just dramatic reasons. It can also be used for comedy, by comparing Woody Allen's existential crisis.
And I had to sit down. I went into a movie house. I didn't know what was playing or anything. I just needed a moment to gather my thoughts and be logical and put the world back into rational perspective.
With Marx Brothers comedy. 2. Parallelism. Parallelism connects separate actions or ideas through thematic similarity. In the experimental 1982 film Koyaanisqatsi by Godfrey Reggio, editing constructs meaning through rhythm and juxtaposition, as editors Ron and Alton force us to compare mass-produced mechanically made chains of meat with commuting workers on escalators. We can see this idea echoed later in films like Martin Scorsese's 2011 film Hugo, where he pairs the inner mechanics of a clock to the rhythm of 1930s Paris. 3. Symbolism. Symbolism introduces images that stand for ideas beyond their literal meaning. For example, a recurring object. The audience actively interprets these images, constructing meaning through association rather than direct exposition. Lawrence of Arabia has my favourite symbolism cut of all time. T.E. Lawrence tries to convince an officer that he should be allowed to go out to the desert. The officer warns him just how hot and dangerous the desert can be.
It is recognized that you have a funny sense of fun.
By juxtaposing these two shots, it makes us compare the fiery heat and harshness of the desert by comparing it with the lit match. Simultaneity. Simultaneity presents events occurring at the same time, often through cross-cutting. This technique builds tension by making the audience aware of multiple unfolding actions. A classic example can be seen in The Silence of the Lambs by Jonathan Demme. The FBI raid sequence cuts between agents approaching a house, anticipating how these threads will collide.
We're going in.
And a killer inside a different location.
Good afternoon. Sorry to bother you. I'm looking for Mrs. Lippman's family.
Initially, editing suggests unity, but ultimately reveals separation. The meaning shifts as the context is refined.
Well, I'm investigating the death of Frederica Bimmel.
5. Leitmotif. Leitmotif involves the repetition of visual or thematic elements to reinforce meaning. This could be a reoccurring image, composition, or action that accumulates significance over time. Think of the Emperor's March in Star Wars. Or the point of view shot of the shark in Jaws, paired with the thuds and sharp violins from the orchestra. So, returning to David Bordwell's argument, if a shot or cut can mean multiple, even contradictory things, then meaning doesn't reside in the technique itself. It emerges from context, structure, sequence, and the viewer's interpretation. What matters is not the technique or tool, but how, when, and why it is used. Ultimately, if there is one idea I'd hope that anyone could take away from this, it's this. Editing isn't just a skill, a craft, or even an art. It is a form of language, not a fixed language with stable definitions, but a dynamic system of relationships. A language that communicates meaning not connected within a single shot, but created in the mind of the audience about what happens in between the shots. A cut can separate or connect. A shot can unify or divide. Just as language isn't defined by individual words, but how they come together and how you can read between the lines, editing is about relationships between images and the meaning those relationships create.